Baizhu has been a polarizing character, to say the least. Some people like him because of all the defensive utility he brings to the table, which is arguably more useful for the high floor Dendro teams compared to even more damage, but some dislike him because they think he just doesn't bring enough to the table offensively. However, there is also a belief that the other Dendro healer we have, Yao Yao, can be close to him or even as good as him. Ever since she released, Yao Yao has been declared as one of the best 4-star to come out since 1.0, thanks to her healing capabilities and Dendro application. In this video, I will show you why exactly Baizhu is straight up better than her, in every context I could think about. First things first, the main part, the healing. Yao Yao has 3 healing sources: her skill, her burst and her passive. Assuming a level of investment that allows her to reach around 43,800 HP, she can heal the active character up to 19,200 with her skill, the whole team by up to 20,000 with her burst, and the active character again by around 5,200 through her passive. This amounts to 44,500 potential healing throughout a rotation to a single character. Meanwhile, Baizhu has 2 healing sources and a small shielding capability that can also be counted as healing if it's seen as effective HP added. Through his skill at the same investment level the previous Yao Yao had, Baizhu can heal his full team by around 7,900. Through his burst, he can heal the active character by around 30,700 in total, and each of his 6 shields will add 4,200 effective HP. Through all of this, his effective healing reaches around 43,300 for a single character, so lower than the amount I stated for Yao Yao before. However, Yao Yao's healing has a couple flaws, which Baizhu's doesn't have. First, her elemental burst healing relies on her being on field throughout the entirety of its potential duration, which is a rotation extension and a damage loss for the team. Considering her burst is her only source of team healing, and almost half of her total healing potential is tied to that, the difference between using it and not using it is quite significant, but using it will certainly lead you to have downtime in your rotation, excluding if you play Yao Yao on niche on-field roles. Meanwhile, all of Baizhu's healing sources function perfectly well whether he's on-field or off-field, which already gives him a decisive edge over Yao Yao, considering the healing amounts I stated before for the two were comparable. Secondarily, Yao Yao's elemental skill cooldown is longer than Baizhu's, and this basically always forces her to use just one per rotation. Meanwhile, there is real potential for Baizhu to use his skill twice per rotation, on every team that allows him to go on field a second time 10 seconds after he used his skill the first time. This can happen on all Haitham teams that have split rotations, traditional quick and quick swap teams, and any type of version or hyperbloom teams where he's the driver. Basically, any team that doesn't have a non-field carry with long field time, meaning all teams excluding Sino ones. This brings Baizhu's effective healing to 51,000, so higher than even Yao Yao's best case scenario. Also, Baizhu has access to Prototype Ember, which is one of his best weapons and gives him a little extra team healing potential. Moreover, since Baizhu's healing is applied throughout a longer 14 seconds window if compared to Yao Yao's elemental skill, which lasts just 10 seconds, that just gives it more flexibility throughout a rotation in abyss scenarios. The second thing that makes Baizhu superior compared to Yao Yao is higher offensive contribution, which based on what I've been able to calculate, applies to every team. In fact, even though in previous videos I stated Baizhu's supportive effects were equal to Yao Yao's Constellation one in terms of straight damage increase for somebody like Haitham, this doesn't necessarily translate to them having the same offensive contribution on the team. In fact, Yao Yao's buff has shorter uptime on Haitham if you use split rotations with him, as it will realistically only end up covering his entire first window and a small part of the second window. Meanwhile, Baizhu's buffs will generally have a longer uptime and can easily cover both Haitham's windows in their entirety. Not only that, but since he buffs all quicken related damage, even a character like Yae can briefly benefit from it during an item rotation, like when she uses her burst. This is not incredibly relevant, but it's worth mentioning nonetheless. Other than that, Baizhu has straight up higher damage potential thanks to the Clam artifact set, which can allow him to surpass 100,000 damage per rotation, since his healing is very consistent and he will reliably be able to proc its effects. Thanks to all of this, in my calculations, triple Dendro compositions with Baizhu end up performing considerably better than Yao Yao variations. Things become even more favorable for Baizhu on Quicken and Quick Room teams that have more Electro units. His buffing capabilities extend to those situations, while Yao Yao's Constellation one doesn't. In those scenarios, Baizhu and Yao Yao just don't compare, also because the former can use useful supportive weapons such as the Hakushin Ring, Thrilling Tales, which can allow him to buff the Electro characters much more than Yao Yao can. For example, the Yae or Keqing Quicken teams will really benefit from Baizhu, as Nahida wasn't ever particularly strong for those teams damage contribution wise. And while Baizhu variants might still feel a bit weaker than those, he might feel more reliable thanks to all the healing he can produce, and also thanks to his smaller Dendro up, which allows characters like Kazuha to be more consistent through their swords. Application wise, I also generally expect Baizhu to be superior. Depending on how many times he can use his skill throughout a rotation, Baizhu should be able to apply 5.6 or 6.4 units of Dendro post-gauge tax on opponents, if he's used entirely off-field. In comparison, if Yao Yao isn't allowed to fully be on-field during her burst duration, her application should be just around 4 units of Dendro post-gauge tax. Alternatively, if the rotation allows her to stay on-field during burst, like it can happen on some Bloom teams, she can reach around 6.4 units of Dendro applied, but since in the same situation, Baizhu can also add Dendro up himself through on-field Dendro attacks, that just gives him an edge all around if compared to Yao Yao. Last but not least, Baizhu is just a more complete unit, thanks to the fact he can drive on-field for powerful Burgeon or Hyperbloom setups, something Yao Yao just can't conventionally do at the same level due to lack of Dendro application. While for example a Baizhu Hyperbloom team might not feel quite as good damage-wise if compared to Nahida's, especially if the latter has her Constellation 2 active, he can compensate through healing and reliability, so it should be a great alternative to her. I'll analyze this comparison in particular in another video. Overall, if I have to be honest, I think Baizhu will be straight up superior to Yao Yao, as it should be, since he's basically supposed to be a 5-star version of her. I know some people feel a bit down about his kit, but they need to realize that him being a Dendro Catalyst user gives him a lot of value by default, regardless of the kit. In addition to that, he'll arguably be the best healer in the game, with some offensive value through supportive effects and the Clam artifact set on top, so I think he will be considered a pretty good unit at release. I'm done for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time!